just heading towards Tomer's for morning coffee. Luckily, we were both able to get apartments here in Rome. I don't even know how far apart we are. 5 blocks at most, maybe. Anyway, I thought I'd make a little video about just talking about kind of the paradigm of drunken boxing and paradigms in general in martial arts. It seems to be one of the things that I keep having messaged to me on the internet. So we talked about it in the workshop, about how drunken sets and drunken forms tend to end up as parts of other styles. You see them in Honga, you see them in Chole Fat. There's some Mantis that has a little bit of drunken in it. Lao Fat Man, Lily Lau's father, was famous for his drunken boxing. So why is it considered an advanced form? Why is it one of those things that people keep kind of hidden away from their students? And what's their purpose? Especially if you get a super orthodox system like a Honga system or an Eagle system or something like that. So what's going on? Well, from having studied drunken boxing for the last 20 years, it seems to me that it's mainly about paradigm shifting. And what I mean by that is that every system, every style of martial arts has its own way of thought. It has its own way of using the biomechanics of the human body to its best advantage. And that means that it's got its own paradigm. But the thing is about martial arts and martial artists is that we tend to follow these paradigms quite religiously. And that means that we get stuck in them. And say you've trained any style for 5, 7, 10 years, you become very familiar with how you're supposed to move, how you're supposed to feel when you're practicing, how you're supposed to think. And what happens then is that you get introduced to something that changes all that. The ideal, of course, in martial arts is that we're supposed to end up, as they say, formless and shapeless. It's like the article I wrote the other day about Wuji becoming Taiji and Yang, all that stuff. Well, because we are born of differentiation, we're trying our hardest to get back towards the source, if you will, of that differentiation. So that means that we're trying to find our way back to Wuji. Looks like I'm going to have to wait for all these cars. And that means we have to be able to get more and more formless. We have to be able to let go of things rather than collect things in order to improve our martial arts. So what does that mean for drunken boxing? Well, drunken boxing is supposed to break you from those shapes, from those ideas, from those ways of thinking. And this is, I think, one of the most misunderstood parts of it. You see people practicing and their drunkenness is very beautiful, and they have these wonderful, clean, crisp shapes that they're able to create at high speeds with their bodies. But that is unfortunately just like what they do in whatever their normal style is. To me, drunken is about removing those shapes and starting to understand the deep principles underneath them. Why are those shapes what they are? What is their purpose? How does power flow from the center of the body outwards to the extremities? And as you start to understand and train more of this, you're going to be able to release more of the shapes. I believe it was Jason who said, the shapes are not the power goes through the shapes. And it's genius. It's a beautiful understanding, a deep understanding. The thing about becoming less attached to the shapes of our martial arts is that not only does it make us more malleable and more free and able to do different kinds of things with our arts, but it also changes the way our arts appear. So you take an art, drunken, that is meant to appear sloppy. It's meant to appear like a drunk. Drunks do not have beautiful shapes. They do not have beautiful movements. They don't stand the way the rest of us do. The intoxication changes their perception of themselves and their perception of reality to the point that they simply fit in and become malleable. This is evident in drunk people surviving car crashes, simply because even though they may be conscious, their bodies are essentially asleep and they can just mold themselves during the accident because they just go with the flow. So being able to release the shape and outward appearance becomes key in being able to express your martial arts more and more freely. So if we take the case of a very orthodox system of martial arts, where you might find a drunken set later on in the style, it's my opinion that this is to break people out of that paradigm. So you've got all the shapes, we take something, really orthodox in your mind, Hangar or whatever, and you break out of those shapes. You start to understand that the power can just flow from the central area of the body, and it can just reach to the extremities as you need it to. You can change your momentum, you can reverse your momentum, you can follow along with an opponent rather than try to control them at all times. This is very much a yin-yang reversal to the way most martial arts and most martial artists think. So, what does that do to your orthodox style? It makes it less concrete. It makes it more malleable, more shapeless, more formless, more able to understand what the opponent is doing and how to fit into that. The beauty of understanding the philosophical writings of Taoism, even to the low level that I do, is that you start to realize that all we're trying to do is fit into the world. We're trying to get along. We're not trying to always conquer it with, good example, huge stone monuments all of the time. We're simply trying to make our way in the world without being too much of a nuisance. And that means that when we're in combat, we should be doing the same thing. We flow with and harmonize with our opponents. And the shape matters not. The appearance doesn't matter anymore. And because if we can handle that in the most difficult of contexts, which is violence, possibly the matter of life and death itself, think how much easier it is to live your life that way. So, it's my contention, I guess, and the point of making this video, as my teacher would say, good kung fu isn't pretty, and pretty kung fu isn't good. And we worry an awful lot about appearance and about what other people think of us while we train for a really long time. And being able to let that go is a huge part of what drunken is about. Drunken should look like terrible. Good drunken boxing, to me, the masters that I have met who have some very nice drunken boxing, which is usually hidden behind other styles, their drunken boxing, if they're very good, it looks like garbage. They wander around, they fall over, their shapes are shapeless. I've seen many examples of this. I've been very lucky to meet a few. I hope to meet more people who do drunken, because I know most people keep it secret. Anyway, don't worry so much about what people see and about what shapes you appear to have. Worry about what's going on inside. I'm at Tawares. It's time for some Italian coffee. Keep training.